Hello and welcome to another episode of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host, Alex, and with me today I have Dan. How are you, Dan?
Oh, yeah, I'm all right, I suppose. After what was another, uh, I don't know, tepid display in the derby, I guess, against the another Yorkshire derby against Blades. But yeah, I mean, all things considering, I'm all right, I guess.
That's good to hear. Yeah, look, we're sort of talking before the episode. Obviously, there's a lot to get through in this one, probably more so off the field than on it, just in terms of Tim Volter. And I think there's been a lot of social media discussion. A couple of other podcasts as well have already had their say in terms of where they stand on Tim Volter. So we will obviously add our 2 cents to that in a little bit. We'll try to focus as much as we can on the pitch to start with, just to discuss the game itself and try to take that step back and I suppose look at it in isolation and sort of assess it as critically as we can. But we'll see how we go, and I'm sure some of that discussion will bleed into the discussion about Tim Volter, and then of course the Stoke game coming up as well. But yeah, look, we'll start with that Sheffield United game specifically, where we did see a couple of changes to the lineup. We saw Burns come in for Zambrano in midfield, as well as Balumi and Kamara getting their debuts on each wing, which meant that Omer came central with Slater dropping down to the bench, and Miller just back from international duty also on the bench. It was interesting actually, and I feel like sometimes I watch games and maybe it's just a moment or a flash, and you think, oh, okay, that's stuck in my mind, and so I thought, Burns carried the ball forward in one instance quite well, and or broke down an opposition play, and I thought, oh, Burns looks okay in midfield. And every other view I've seen was, Burns was rubbish in midfield. He can't play central midfield, and I was like, oh, okay. Sometimes I just see the game slightly differently. But what did you make of the changes, I suppose, overall? And I guess, yeah, thoughts on that first half, I suppose.
Um, Look, I'm probably one of the Burns naysayers. I didn't think. I mean,
I
like
think most people are. That's fine.
there were moments, and like I'll give you that. There were a few like really tidy moments, and maybe I've been too quick to judge him. He's a young player. He's out loan on the club, and this is his like sort of first start. And there were some nice moments of class where I think carrying the ball forward. A couple of moments where he evaded some players really well, really cleverly. But I didn't feel like, even with those moments, that he had like a huge impact on the game as a whole. But in saying that, nor did really anyone else
I was just going to
in a
ask.
black and amber shirt. So, like, I don't know. I like it. It was a promising performance, I guess, from like Burns particularly, but I think that we've still got, like, you've got Zambrano there, who I think overall is a better option there. From what I've seen between the two of them, I think Zambrano has more about him, and then we still have Puerta to see at all. So,
and Alzate as well.
well, yes, that's true. So uh, I think like, yeah, he'll be a good option. I don't know. I don't. From what I've seen of the players to start in that position, I don't think he's the best option we have. But otherwise,
I was just going to say.
Oh, yeah.
I was just going to say, just it reminds me a little bit of a couple of seasons ago. We gave Simmons a start in midfield, where it's almost as if we've gone, well, look, we should give you a go, see what you're made of, and just know whether it's an option or not. It's just a really weird game to do it in. I mean, I would have thought if you're going to throw a player taking that step up from League One into a game to see if he's an option, you do it against a Stoke or a Cardiff to say, look, let's see what you can do if you know what you're about. Whereas if you're throwing him in against Sheffield United and he doesn't do it, you're kind of like, oh, well, we tried and it's not going to work. You'll just be a bench option now. But it's like, well, it's a pretty tough game to give him that chance in.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point as well. It'll be interesting to see, I guess, how that position unfolds. because obviously like Zambrano came in and got a couple of goes straight away, but was out for this one. So yeah, look, I guess like a space to watch, because I think like we've seen it over the last couple of years that having the right player in that position can make a big difference.
Mm.
Seri's been really strong, really good for us over the last couple of years, and before that you had Smallwood, who did a really good job in that defensive midfield at number 6, like sort of breaking up play and starting the attack going forward. So it'll be, I think, it's a crucial piece of the puzzle that we've got to figure out, which piece fits. But
And it's almost like we've just given Volta too many pieces, and he's just wanting to
well,
try all of them, and
yeah,
yeah, it's a lot of
I mean,
options.
we've certainly I mean, I guess like technically we've kind of, I don't know whether it's almost like 4 or 5 in the mids, but not really. Like it's essentially 3 midfielders, and we've bought about 700 of them. So
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how they all fit in. It was nice that we picked up a couple of wingers who both started in Kamara and Balumi. Um, of the two, I think Balumi was better, but both looked like that. I mean, very early days, like that they need to acclimatize and get used to the players around them to an extent. I think Balumi, yes, lost the ball for the first breakaway goal for United that Sheffield United scored, but I think there's a couple of moments. There was one cross come shot that was sort of curling in towards the top post, the back post that had to get tipped over, and a couple of little moments like that, but not enough across the 70 or odd minutes I think he played. I think Kamara only made it to half time. So
Yeah. Which was interesting because Kamara was played on the left wing, and I think I saw a comment from a Portsmouth supporter who said that they played him a bit on the left wing for Portsmouth, and then very quickly realised he's really only effective on that right-hand side. So it's interesting that we played him again as sort of a similar comment to the Burns comment, where we're saying potentially we'll see against Stoke. We'll just see Miller and Balumi start with Kamara on the bench, and it feels quite harsh to him to say we're going to play you out of position on your non-natural wing, hook you at halftime because you're not performing on your non-natural wing, and then, well, I guess it remains to be seen what happens against Stoke. But if his papers are stamped a little bit as a result to just being a bench player, maybe a bit harsh on him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I kind of with that one, with Miller having been away on international and coming back, and I do wonder if maybe it was just like he got to, like, maybe it could have all been that could have been a sort of a pre-planned one, unless Kamara came out and was blitzing it or whatever, that you're going to get 45, you get some minutes under your belt, you'll sort of get a feel for how we play in a competitive game. But then Miller's been going okay, so he's going to come on in the second half, and maybe that means that Kamara and Balumi maybe sort of fight it out for that right hand side most weeks, which might be good. But apart from that, I think Omer was he was pretty good. He was busy and tried to get involved in a lot of stuff. But apart from that, like Bedia had a couple of chances, which I do. To be fair, I think he was unlucky with a couple. There was one that he sprayed wide of the post, but I think it takes a touch off Jones or someone like right before and just drifts then away from him. But there was I think it was a header he should have done much better. There was a couple of moments that he really could have and should have done better. But to be honest, there were moments that were few and far between. I think went to ground. We had a 3-on-2, and he went to ground instead of playing the pass. And there was
It was one of those ones where it's almost like he got fouled and then he didn't really know whether he should keep going or not. And then sort of like a step after being fouled goes down to win the free kick, where you're like, if you stayed on your feet or got the pass away, it probably would have been better.
So, yeah, look, but I guess generally, like, I'd say we got forward better in this game than we have in some of the other the previous games, but we still had no end product, and we still couldn't make effective decisions around. And that's one example of it. But there were about half a dozen times throughout the game where we got into that position where we had created an overload, over their defense, and couldn't somehow manage to, play it to a man when we had more players than them in that area. So very, very frustrating in that regard. Malem didn't do much for me apart from the one header that hit the crossbar. But apart from that, I didn't really feel his involvement much in the game. Giles,
I don't want to. I mean, we'll talk lineups for Stoke.
lackadaisical.
Yeah,
just like no real desire to be there.
Is Drame first choice now?
I think Drame looked real good when he came on. Got involved. Was energetic. Overlapping. Playing passes, getting involved. I think I'd say he probably does deserve, even just on that 45, or like deserve a start, or half hour or whatever it was, deserve a start over Giles, because to be honest, he said the right things when when coming back and signing the deal, that he loved his time here and was like couldn't think of a better place to be, and it was a perfect place for his development. But he's not really. I think like the first game he was good, and then apart from that, he's been very disappointing. And then I mean Jones, McLaughlin, Coyle, solid but unspectacular. Panda,
hey, their pass accuracy, they're brilliant players.
Don't get me started. And I mean Panda, okay, a few good things. I think the second goal he could have done.
Second goal's a tough. Yeah, I get it.
The second one was a near post one, wasn't it? Or am
I think they're
crazy?
both far post, because I think the second one, it's almost like it's a flick through legs. So it's like you could say, he could have done better, but maybe he's a bit unsighted, or give him a bit of a chop out. But yeah, like it's one of those ones where you're like, oh, probably could have got a hand to it.
But like I'm not overly critical. I think he got stitched up a couple of times by some inefficiency.
It's wild to think, like, actually how well he started the season, that if he was the same player that he looked in pre-season, how much worse we could be.
Yeah, well, that's what, like, was just looking at the table a minute ago, and like defensively, like, yeah, we're 1 point something a game, like we're 6 goals in 5 games or something, but we're actually not that bad overall compared to some of the other like teams. But offensively, 2 goals in 5 games, we're second. I think there's only one team that's scored less than us.
Is it Cardiff, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's one team that only got the 1 goal or something, and then like we're well off. And it seems to be the case with us. I mean, it's probably the case with most teams, but we just don't have the balance. We're either like good defensively or good offensively, but not both. And I would say, like, if I had to pick, I'd actually say we're okay defensively, like in general terms.
So just to highlight actually just how well Panda started, he's 5th in the league for goals prevented in terms of XG. So Plymouth, Swansea, Oxford, and Watford goalkeepers above him. I think this must be, maybe it's XG per game, because it's saying 1.09. But that just sort of shows, like, apart from Oxford, who's just come up, Plymouth, who are looking like going down, and Watford, who were arguably going to go down before the season started, Panda's right up there for sort of goals prevented, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think he's started pretty well, much better than like we anticipated. I think on the when we did our crossover with the Hullenbach, we both basically, it was almost the consensus that Panda was going to be the most disappointing or underwhelming sort of performer. But he flicked a switch when it got to competitive games, and his performances have been much stronger. But Yeah, I think some of those stats are a little bit misleading, because I think I saw one that says McLaughlin's up there as like top 4 for pass percentages or something in the league so far with an 88% pass accuracy, or whatever. And I think I said in the chat, like, that might be the case, but like, way to pad your stats when you're just passing it to Alfie Jones, who's standing 5 yards away from you all the time. I think that's where sometimes you can get carried away with stats in isolation.
Mm.
Overall, just it was a horrible watch. Really, very just superbly frustrating. We started with the short corners that were shit again, and
I
then
loved I loved that after the goal, I think Omer was lining up to take another short corner, and the crowd actually booed. It sounded as if the crowd actually booed the short corner, and he whipped it into the box instead, and we almost scored from it. And everyone just goes, "How hard is that to actually just put the ball in the box?" And just
yeah,
on short corners, because I feel like, so I was listening to the Tullum back boys before this, and they were almost saying that there's no point to short corners. And I'll slightly push back on that, because short corners do have their place. But when you see them working properly, what it is it's either you play the short corner to a player who immediately whips it in, so you're just taking the corner from a different angle to sort of throw off the defense, or you play it a 1-2 back to the corner taker, who can either then take it into the box or take it or throw it in from a different angle. You don't pass it to a player, stand on it, go, oh crap, now I'm being pressured, pass it back further to be safe. Oh crap, I'm being pressured. I'm the last man. I've suddenly turned it over. They've scored a goal, which is what happened for us.
Yeah, I think, like, yeah, I agree. Short corners as a concept, I've no problem with, but our execution of short corners has been woeful so far this season. Like, the other team that I follow, Central Coast Mariners, play short corner they play them quite frequently, and it's as you said, that 1-2. That's what they play, a 1-2, and try and get that player then back into the box, running across the byline, trying to make you know just like sort of drive that ball across the box into traffic and try and sort of get a deflection or a touch at the far post, rather than just going, oh yeah, I don't know what to do with this. I guess I'll just play it a bit deeper and play it a bit deeper and play it a bit deeper.
And this isn't the first game. Like, I remember making these comments. I don't even think Leeds was the first game. It might have been, maybe it was Millwall the game before that. There's been a number of games where we've played these short corners where we've basically gone to all the effort to win the corner in the first place, and then ended up passing it back to almost halfway and being like, well, what was the point of having the corner in the first place?
I'd be surprised if we went back through all of the games and looked at all of the short corners that we've played this season, if they didn't all end up in Panda or Jones's feet at some point.
100%.
Because, or not, maybe not Jones, because he's probably in the box, but whoever the deepest player is
Coyle
in
or
those
someone,
moments.
yeah.
Because they sure as heck don't ever get into the box.
And it's also not just corners.
Which is
I've
really
noticed
strange when we're like, with the way that we're playing on those set pieces, by pushing so many players high and getting so many players into the box and leaving ourselves so exposed defensively, that we don't even like try to get it in there and try and make something happen. Like, in that situation, you either need to get a goal or you need to send it out for a corner or a goal kick again, so you've got a chance to reset. You don't even want to like risk leaving it on the field of play that they can counter on you, and yet that's all we seem to do on short corners. So very frustrating.
But it's not even short corner. It's not even just the corners. It's any set piece. I noticed
Right.
so often, like, we'd have an offside, like a Sheffield United player would be offside. We'd win an offside and we just tap it short, or we'd win a free kick and we just tap it short. And it's almost like we want to take away the set piece aspect as much as possible, to say, oh boys, it's just play on. It's just play it at feet and just keep going, as if we've got that momentum, we're surging forward, we're trying to keep them on the back foot, but we're not, because we then play it to feet and then pass it around. And I'm like, you're giving them time to get back anyway. What was the point of taking it quickly? Like, it comes back to, the commentator on our international coverage sort of saying just didn't understand what we were trying to do. Sky Sports saying they just don't understand what we're trying to do. We're passing it around at the back, 15 passes in succession, where Sheffield United are 2-0 up. So they're sitting back going, if you guys want to pass it around at the back, we don't care. Like, you're not hurting us. And then McLaughlin or whoever, Coyle, passes it forward to a Sheffield United player who's pressing against Balumi or whoever, wins the ball back. And all of a sudden, 2 quick passes and they're attacking us. And it's just like, what are we actually trying to achieve? Because, we'll talk about more with Volta himself, but this is my frustration or my concern is it's not as if we're having these great plays that are just not coming off where, we're taking these shots that just aren't scoring and we're going, oh, we can see what we're trying to do. It's just not clicking. Like maybe the players just need to, gel a bit more and all of a sudden we'll start scoring all these. We're not even creating that much. Like we're having 2 shots on target a game, which feel like it's more the players taking it into their own hands. Like Coyle's goal against Plymouth, the perfect example. It feels like that's Coyle just going, stuff it. Like we're losing, we're chasing the game. I'm just going to go for it rather than, oh, that was like a great, set play off the training ground sort of thing. So, like there was that time, and I think it was in the first half even, where we had everyone so far forward that was it Kiefer Moore might have been the last man essentially, but was still in his own half. So he was onside. They just play the ball through at him and he just strolls up the pitch. And I think Jones might have gotten back and pressured him so he couldn't get a shot away. But it could have easily been 3, 4, 5 goals, really. And that's
if they'd have parked someone with a bit of pace up top, we'd have been screwed. But they left, Kiefer Moore up there, who is not the quickest striker in the league. So I think that was probably our saving grace. If they'd have put some of their other quicker fellas up top just to exploit that counter, there would have been, as you say, probably 4 or 5, half a dozen one-on-ones with Panda that he would have had to deal with. So overall, very, very disappointing. I don't know how you get 15 or 16 corners and concede 2 goals from them. That's got to be a new record, surely, to concede. I mean, it's a drawn out own goal. Realistically, our corners at the moment, like it's just insane.
I'd be interested. I don't know. It's a stat within a stat, so I don't know if it would be. But shots resulting from corners, I would love to know how many of our 15 or 16 corners ended with us having a shot. Like basically to your point, I'd love to know. Presumably, I think all of our corners just about work their way back to halfway or to one of our defensive players. But look, we spent a lot of time on a game that I thought was going to be quite a quick discussion in the end. But
we'll keep a track of that when we play Stoke. We'll have to keep a mental note of like how many corners when we get them, how many actually end up in shots, and how many go backwards and turn into nothing.
Yeah, definitely. I'll get your votes for this game. I suspect this was a hard one to come up with.
Yeah, look, I did struggle. I had them jotted down mentally when I was watching the game and afterwards, but it's been a while and I kind of forgot. But I'm pretty sure that when I'm looking at the teams, I'm pretty sure I actually almost just went with subs, which is insane. I might have gone Omer for 3, and then I think I went Casey Palmer for 2. Because who I think actually, when he came on, had a positive impact. Tried to play some really nice passes, some clever passes around the box to split defenses, get the ball into the box so that somebody could actually get a shot off, but they just weren't quite working. And I'll give one to Drama, who I thought was really good as well. But an honourable mention to Slater as well, because I think that basically those subs, when they all came on, showed a lot more impetus and effort than whoever they replaced, pretty much. So.
Yeah, I went Coyle for the 3, probably just based on the fact that his effort and intensity for the full 90 didn't drop off. And we say it, I feel like we say it almost every week, but he's really becoming one of those, legendary might be a strong word, but like just he's a true captain of City. Like you look at like Ian Ashby and others who've worn the armband and you go, Coyle's right up there in terms of, surviving successive managers, kind of proving doubters wrong and always just putting 100% in every single week. Omer for the 2, I will say quickly on him though, we didn't touch too much on him, but it felt as if he did get a lot of space and drive up through the midfield and then just didn't really seem to know what to do with it. Like he'd almost hold on to it slightly too long or not really have that final out ball. And that is part of me kind of goes, maybe there is that argument to be made of needing to gel slightly more because maybe it is just a case of when, Kamara or Balumi or whoever is running into the right positions or Bedia is making the right run, that Irma will have that final ball and then suddenly it will click and we will start to score goals. But he's making the right runs. He's carrying the ball. He just doesn't really have anyone to then release with it. And then I went Panda for the 1. I thought Panda made a couple of smart saves, and even in the 2-0 loss, I thought he wasn't disgraced in the shirt. A quick comment on Palmer as well, because I actually really thought Palmer had a great game as well. And I think he's actually a really good case study in one of the arguments for Volta being, oh, we need to give these new players time to bed in and gel, and they've only been here 5 minutes. Palmer's was just about our final signing of the window, and he's looked one of our best signings in, I think he's played something like 30, 35 minutes. And then you look at like Mellum's played over 500 minutes, Bedier's played about 300 minutes, because I was looking at this just before, and I think there was one other one. Miller's played like 300 or 400 minutes as well. And I'm like, Palmer's looking almost arguably like better than any of them, and he's played like a fraction of the minutes of them. So this whole argument that players need ages to settle in, and granted, you could say, well, he's played in England or blah blah blah. So's Miller. So you say, okay, yeah, so Mellum and Bedia haven't, so they need time. But I don't know, like it's a good case that like Palmer, Drame, who was the other one? Like Balumi and Kamara have sort of looked okay as well. And they're probably the 4 players who've played the least minutes of the new signings. So anyway, just a point on Palmer, because I thought he was quite good too. Okay, so Volta. We'll talk a bit more detail about our manager. I suppose I wanted to start just by saying, I think there's an angle people take, which is if you are pro Rosenior, you're automatically anti-Volta, and it's an axe to grind that people have where they were pissed off that Rosenior was sacked. They were looking for Volta to fail. They want him to fail so they can be proved right that it was wrong to sack Rosenior. And I won't lie that there is part of me that sits there and goes, this is proving us right in being frustrated that Rosenior was sacked when he was. But there's certainly no part of me that wants Volta to fail. Like, I would love him to come out and belt Stoke 3-4-0 and us to go, brilliant, it's all working, we're scoring goal. Like the concept that a City supporter wants City to do poorly just so that we can sit there and go, oh yeah, we were right that Rosenior shouldn't have been sacked. I'd love us to be sitting there in the Premier League next season going, we made the right call. There's no part of me that doesn't want that. But the facts of the matter are that we're sitting second bottom, where we've got one open play goal for the season, which was basically despite our tactics, not due to them. And we've got a manager who's coming out after the Sheffield United game saying he was really happy with the performance, and that apart from those 2 mistakes, it was a great performance from the team and what he wanted them to do. I think there's a lot of red flags being thrown up at the moment, and I don't think expressing concern about the current manager necessarily has the ulterior motives that some people seem to think it does. But I guess I'll get your thoughts on the situation.
Look, I think I was, and I'll be fair. Like, in our chat, in our group chat, I'm normally fairly optimistic about the state of things. I'm normally, look on the positive, give the positive spin. I'm always giving Mike a hard time for being the pessimistic one in the group, but I think this season, I very quickly sort of overtook him as the pessimistic one. I was, I think, one of the first ones to say, well, how much time does he get? Like, at what point do we stop using the players need time to gel? As you just brought up with Casey Palmer as an example, how long do they get that excuse before we expect results from them? Because at the end of the day, these are players and managers who are getting paid a boatload of money to kick a ball around, on a field for us to enjoy. And for the most part, they've already been doing it for, in a professional scenario or a professional environment for 10, 15, 20 years, some of them. Right. So anyone who's 30, like, or approaching 30 in a professional level, has been probably in an academy since they were 10, all the way through the ranks, and and been playing So the concept that they would need months and months to gel with their teammates seems very foreign. Like, at the end of the day, they're playing football. Like, that's what they need to do, and you need to be able to, you need to be able to pass, you need to be able to tackle, you need to be able to open your eyes and look at where your players are. and that, like, realistically, that's it. That's what you need to be able to do. And at the moment, the players that are coming in, they're not doing that. Like, I get, I and I have obviously simplified, like oversimplified, like football there, but the gist is that, like,
But also these guys have had two, like, especially because we're just out the other side of an international break where the entire squad, bar Miller and Palmer, have spent the 2 weeks, you would think, in training together, running through set plays, running through drills, running through what Tim Volter wants them to do. And you can say, yes, Baloomi's probably the only one who has not experienced English football before and is in a new environment with his teammates. You look at Kamara, you look at Bedia, you look at Mellon. I'm thinking players who started against Sheffield United. You're looking at 10 out of the 11 players there have played in England before, being, Bedia's played games for us before that game. Has, 6 or 7 of them have played with their City teammates before. 5 of them were here last season. 6 of them were here last season. And in our entire back four, plus Irma, plus, Panda wasn't playing, but he was here. There's an element of saying, well, like you said, like how many games do these players need? You look at, for instance, for all the crap that Rosenia got for saying, well, we signed all these players in January and he couldn't get them to the playoffs. And I think, well, hang on. So we've signed Sharp, we've signed Zaruri, we've signed Cavallio, we've signed Giles, we've signed Ohio, all in January. And I think I'm probably forgetting one as well, like Panda, but he didn't play. Oh, and Irma as well. Rosenia then threw most of those into the 11 reasonably quickly. And yes, we fell short by a win. But by and large, Carvalho scored 9 or 10 goals. Ohio scored, 3 or 4 goals. Zaruri even chipped in with 2 goals. Zaruri was probably the main disappointment. Sharp was sort of just a gamble, like an experienced head to be in the dressing room. But by and large, Rosenia kind of got those guys to hit the ground running with no preseason and just throwing them into a playoff race. And you think, for what, maybe most of the players who started for us against Sheffield United, they've had either a chunk of the preseason or a few games in the lead up, plus the international break. It just feels like there's like a lot of excuses being made to say we need more time to justify this. And time's running out. Like, we got another month before you start to say playoffs are done.
Yeah, look, some of those players, you talk about, like, Malem's been here since preseason.
Yeah.
And, like, so that's we're 5 games, so plus the 2-week break. So there's about 7 weeks at least, plus a couple. So he's been here for 2 to 3 months. How does he still not, like, how is it that he hasn't gelled with the players around him? How's
With
it that he
Omer,
hasn't,
like, him
like,
and Omer have
yeah,
played together for
how
however
is
many
he,
games.
like, because basically there was the goal in the cup game,
Yeah,
and the
which was
header off
really,
the bar.
it was a great
Oh, right,
goal.
good. I agree, good goal. But that moment, and then the header against Sheffield United, and apart from that, I can't remember him, like, anything that he's done. And you would expect from, the attacking midfielder who knows Walter's system and has come from, worked with him before and come in, that he would be, he'd be the linchpin. He'd be there. He'd be making things happen. He'd be, a pivotal part of this attack. But he seems to be on the periphery for quite a lot of it. I think the other thing is, like, apart from saying players need time to gel with each other, is the concept that we're playing this new style of football that they need time to understand and adapt to. And I've played and watched football for a long time, and to be honest, I don't really see that there's that much difference between the way that Rosenia was playing and the way that Volta has them playing. There's a lot of similarities. The main difference is that when we want to go forward with Volta, we go up the wings, and with Rosenia we played to Serian through the middle a lot more frequently. But we both have really slow build up. Both systems weren't really getting the best out of our attacking assets or options. We weren't like, and I'm a fan of what we did, what Rosina did with us, but can see the point. We didn't. There was games where we did not create a lot. There were patches of the season where we did not create a lot, and sometimes we still again had to rely on individual brilliance to save the day, like a Delap making a 40-yard run, or Philogene or Carvalho, who saved our bacon late in the season. But there's actually not a huge, like, despite the way that Arjun talked about Volta's heart attack football, and the way that he wants us to play and to play this brilliant attacking football, there's actually not that big of a difference between the two styles. And so I don't even think like that is really a valid point either. And again, it goes to the point that again, they're professional footballers, and they should know the game. They should know how to play different formations. And I know some of them have preferences, like, because I have preferences for formations and positions and things. But even so, like, they should be able to work within those constraints. I just think, like, and I guess, I don't know. I'm very frustrated, and I don't know how much longer Volta has realistically before, one, the calls start coming for his head, but also that Arjun just has to take action, because, like, even at this point, like, Shota had a better start than Volta has, and
which is crazy to think.
And he got sacked for underperforming, and then we brought Rosina in, who steadied the ship and then did really well, and he got sacked for underperforming, and Volta's going worse than both of them. So
I think that's actually a really good point to hone in on, is particularly with Shota, is he took over from Grant McCann. He won 6 of his last 18 games, which is okay. It's not anything to set the world on fire, with largely the same squad. I think we had Ali come in, and I think there was one other, like obviously Marcus Force, who didn't do much. But we then started the season with 15, 16 new players. So we brought in Seri, we brought in Oscar, we brought in Tete, we brought in Tufan, we brought in Figueiredo, we brought in, I'm forgetting whoever it was that we brought in. We brought in a left back, because we seem to bring in a left back every year, but we didn't have, because was Elder still? Elder wasn't still there, was he?
Yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, I think Elder was still there.
Okay, so maybe Elder was, but well, whatever it was. Like we had a whole lot of players. So we had 4, 5, 6 new players in the starting 11 in that start of the season for Shota, and he started with 3 wins in his first 6 games as well. And like Oscar had 7 goals in 5 games or something, and he was still sacked after 10 or 11 games because it just turned. And there wasn't that same narrative then to say, oh, it's a new squad, give him time, it's going to gel, whatever. Everyone could just tell it wasn't working. And I think the players actually went to Arjun and said, like, nah, this isn't working. And I think it was like Greaves and Coyle and stuff saying, no, this isn't working. And I wonder if they're going to do the same with Volta. And I don't know, do Tan and Arjun have the ego to say, okay, we got this wrong? Because it's just not working. And do they cut their losses? Because I think the biggest frustration is, I think when McCann was sacked, you go, okay, that's Arjun wanting to bring in his own man and shot up. And it's easier to then be like, oh, I got that one wrong. To sack a manager who got you to 7th from 13th and on the cusp of the playoffs, and to sack them, it's a much harder decision to then justify sacking their replacement. So look, I think, like, talking timeframes, I think we've got a really handy little block of games now to the next international break, where we play Stoke, Cardiff, QPR, Norwich, which I think, given the form that all 4 of those teams are in, could very feasibly be 4 wins, or very feasibly be 4 losses. Where I think if it's not at least, I'd even say, maybe call it 7 points, 2 wins and a draw. I think 2 wins and a draw is the bar for me, at least. If he's going to sack him, but I don't know. Like, what do you like? As much as the supporters can sit here and say we think he should go, do you think Arjun would actually do it, or do you think he'll give him till, say, January, just to really be like, no, I'm going to give him that time?
I think at the end of the day, like, Arjun is he's a businessman, and I think it'll be hard for him to swallow his pride and say, you know what, I got this wrong. But I also don't think I think he's aware that if he leaves it too long, and he puts us in a position where we're going to get relegated, that is a huge loss in terms of revenue that he's probably not really going to be prepared to want to take. And so I think, just from a purely financial perspective, I think that he will. I unless things turn around drastically very soon, I think he'll make a change before January.
I just had the thought. I mean, what if he's been inspired by Birmingham and he thinks, let's go down for a year, spend whatever we want, build a Premier League squad, and then just go back up. It's much easier doing it that way.
God, I hope not.
Only other point. So we sort of danced around it before in terms of players needing to gel. So there is an argument to be made that there's still a lot of players we haven't actually seen play yet, like Charlie Hughes, I think, is out with an appendix injury, which is, you always get I feel like you always get these stories when managers get sacked where new manager comes in, players that were injured get fit and start playing, and the old manager would surely be looking there going, bloody hell, like if I'd had Charlie Hughes in my defence instead of McLaughlin or Puerta as well, we haven't seen Rushworth in goal and Alzate. My only concern is, as we were saying, when you look at like a Mellum and Bedia and stuff who've started to play 3, 4, 5 games for us and still not seeing that improvement, is are we necessarily going to, in 5, 6, 7 games time, see an improvement in these guys? Or are we already seeing that like the players just aren't really buying into the strategy or tactics of Volta? That's just not, he's just not going pragmatic enough. Like he's not saying, okay, it's going to take time for the players to get up to speed. So for now, let's not throw 10 men up for a corner. Let's leave 2 players back so we don't concede from a corner again. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I don't know, but I think like to point you made previously, I think like probably one of the most concerning things is that like he comes out and in a seemingly head in the sand, just saying like, nope, they did what I want them to. I'm very happy with that performance. Which, I mean, potentially that's his way of trying to, protect the players from blame and say, that I'm happy. I told them to play that way, so they've done what they were asked to do, so don't blame them. Which I
hope that's what it is, but
yeah,
it's
if
just
that's
like
the case, that's okay. But I think, I mean, and Rosini wasn't perfect. There were times where he did the same sort of thing and said, "Nope, I was happy with that performance, even when it didn't go against us." But I think there were also as many times where he came out and said, "No, that wasn't good enough. We didn't perform. We need to score goals, and we didn't do that. We need to be more clinical." And I guess that's another thing to watch. If over the next few weeks there's not that shift in his, I guess those post-match and those pre-match like presses where he doesn't, push, I guess, just put it on record and push the players to actually perform and achieve and score and keep clean sheets and do whatever it is we got to do, then I think that's also an element of concern. But as much as I'm not really a fan at the moment. I think the heart attacks that we're getting from this heart attack football are all at the wrong end of the pitch. I'm the same as you. I don't want him to fail. Like I'd really love him for it to all turn around over the next few weeks, for everyone to gel, whatever that's supposed to mean, and it just all fall into place and click, and whatever other metaphors I can find, and we start to score goals and we start to win, and we get that positive feeling back. Because I guess probably the most disappointing thing is that across the 2 or 3 home games we've had over 20,000 fans turn up to what have mostly been pretty abject displays, which is a theme that continues, from last season. It was one of the, again, the many complaints about, Rosini's football, who couldn't get wins at home, but it doesn't look like it's necessarily the manager's fault there. There's something else going on.
It's been going for years. It's crazy, right? Like the only season we've had a positive home record, it seems, was the COVID season when fans couldn't go to the games and we got promoted from League One, and you just feel like, bloody hell, it's
Are
so
you
tough
suggesting that the fans are the problem, Alex? You're gonna be in a lot of trouble, mate.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like I'm trying to remember. I feel like the last like, so the season we went up under Bruce the second time to the Premier League, so 15, I think it was 2015, 2016. I think we dominated the MKM or KCOM as it was back then, and it was really like the fortress. And I feel like since then, obviously, then that Premier League season was terrible. And then after that, with like Slutsky and Adkins, it didn't seem to get any better, but it wasn't like noticeably terrible. And it was really only, I guess, that second half of that McCann season where we lost everywhere anyway. Like, it wasn't specifically at home. It's just gotten gradually worse and worse. I just don't know. You know, they've put in a new pitch. Like, maybe we can play better football on the new pitch. But it's just a really weird one. And like you say, like getting over 20,000 each week, you just got to feel for the home supporters to have to watch this this poor level of football. On the comment about like his post-match comments, I feel like there's better ways to express. And look, obviously in the cold light of day, when you don't have the emotions, it's very easy to sit there and word up a perfectly crafted sentence to say something along the lines of, you know, players are really proud of the effort today. The boys, you know, ran for the full 90 minutes. It was great to see the effort, but we're still working on the training ground. We've got to get back to work on the training ground to see the improvements that I want to play the way I want to play football. Just something like that, where you're not throwing them under the bus. You're saying, you know, they've put in the great effort, but also you're giving a message to the supporters who've booed the players off at full time. You're giving a message to the supporters to say, don't worry, I can see what you can see. We're going to make this right. We're going to improve things. Coming out and saying, I was really happy with how we played. You know, I was really happy other than the mistakes with how we played. It's like, it comes across as someone that's actually already feeling the pressure and is kind of getting really stubborn and saying, no, this is good. Like, you guys don't know what you're looking at. Like, this is good football. It's just a few mistakes we've got to fix up. It doesn't, I don't know. It just feels like he's already got his back against the wall a bit.
I think it's like it's interesting because we made some comparisons before to, like, in the style of play, that there's some in theory it appears that there's supposed to be some similarities to the way that like Postecoglou, what he's doing at Tottenham, in the way that, you know, there's supposed to be rotation of players. If you know, the left back goes forward and drives into space, then someone just moves out, and they sort of, there's some fluidity in the way that they do things. And like, Ange gets a lot of flack for being a very stubborn, you know, set in his approach. But I guess, like, just as a counterpoint, the way that he approaches press conferences is he will say, like, yep, they did what I wanted them, like the way that I wanted them to play. But he also will say, but this wasn't good enough. We need to be better. We need to work on this. We've identified this issue. We're working on it, but it needs to be better, and the players need to do better. And I think, like, it's that which you can go, like, I think that people appreciate more than just, what feels like, it just feels like head in the sand when you lose 2-0 and you go, well, we're happy with what they did.
Yeah,
like,
I think I saw. So someone made the point. I was probably listening to like an Aussie Rules podcast or something. It wasn't even football related, but it's still completely valid. Is when a manager gives a press conference or an interview, you're talking to three different groups of people. You're talking to the club, so you're talking to your boss to basically explain your performance. You're talking to the supporters to basically either, you know, pump them up after a great win or sort of apologize or justify a poor performance. And you're talking to the players. And it felt like, if the argument is correct that Volta was basically trying to protect the players, it's like he's just talking to them and saying, don't worry, boys, like, it was a good performance, like, whatever. He's trying to protect them. But you've also still got, or maybe he's, you know, talking to Ajun as well to say, hey, don't worry, boss, like, we're doing all right. But you can't forget the fans. You've got to be talking to the fans too. And you can't dismiss the fact that the fans weren't happy with that performance.
Yeah, look, it's a space to watch. It's all going to unfold over the next few weeks.
That's it.
Starting again this weekend with Stoke City.
Stoke.
So
Yeah, perfect segue. I was about to jump onto that as well. So, you know, we're talking about potentially a manager leaving. Stoke have actually pulled the trigger with Schumacher having been dismissed following their loss to Oxford over the weekend. You know, interesting timing in that sense, because it seems as if the Stoke supporters weren't actually too unhappy with him. So it seems as if, my understanding at least, is that John Walters is in there as the director of football and presumably has wanted to bring in his own man as manager. So they're appointing, the name's gone out of my head, but it's an assistant coach at Norwich who has previously worked with Carlos Corberán. So I suppose they're going on the theory that Corberán's turned out pretty well, trying to get some of that magic elixir or whatever you'd call it, promotion elixir from him. Presumably, potentially in charge for the Friday night game. Might be too early for him to be in charge. So I think it's Ryan Shawcross, who's the caretaker manager, and I think they had a League Cup game this morning, which I think they lost. So it'll be interesting to see how they shape up in that sense. I mean, if Shawcross manages in any sense the way that he played football, it could be quite a physical one on Friday night. I mean, we sort of talked about this game already a little bit in terms of what we're hoping for, but I suppose in a broad, we want a 3-0 win. We want a 1-0 win, really. Like, we just take a goal at this point. But in terms of how you want to see the team lining up, or how you want to see any sort of progression or response to that Sheffield United game, what are your thoughts heading into this one?
So I want Drama to start on the left. I think he just outperformed Giles. In his whatever it was, 40 minutes to the last 200 minutes of Giles. I want Casey Palmer to start over Malem, and probably Zambrano. Or I mean, I'd even accept, like, if Finn Burns wasn't I don't know, like, but if he was an experiment, hypothetically, to see, like, give him a go, then if Gustavo Puerta's available, then I'd be happy for him to start and just to see what he's about. But I think probably Miller over Kamara. I don't know if there's much, like, between them, really. They both sort of lacked a lot of useful output, but those are probably the changes in terms of lineup that I would suggest.
That's where it's so weird that we play so much down that left-hand side, when it feels like that left-hand side is so much less creative, because you've got Giles and Miller or Kamara, who I feel like just didn't create much. But just on that point about experimenting, this is where it's frustrating. And like I always say every year, I love a good cup run or whatever, but this is where it's really frustrating going out of the League Cup in the round that we did, because you'd love to have had that second round or third round cup game to throw in, your Puerta, your Burns, your Kamara, things like that, and play around with that formation and get that chance to actually experiment with players in a League Cup game. So it's a bit frustrating that you're sort of having to learn on the run in the league. Completely agree with those changes. The interesting one for me as well is Slater looked really good off the bench, but I wonder if that means he's going to almost fall into that super sub role where he can come on almost like Myler used to, where you can throw him on in almost any position where he's needed.
That's almost how Slater, how he started with us. He came off the bench as a super sub and came in any of those positions in that sort of midfield or sort of even wide positions. Did really well. Then a space opened up and he turned himself into a starter. And then now he's gone back to the super sub bench. But I don't hate it. I hate it for him, because I think, like, he's come so far and he is like a really dependable player. And sometimes you kind of need, I think we've talked about, you need some guys who are just going to be a 7 or 8 out of 10 every week, versus someone who's going to be a 9 out of 10 one week and then a 5 out of 10 for the next month. So,
and like in saying, like, we both gave Irma votes for the last game, but his tracking back for the first goal was non-existent. And you think if that's Slater on the pitch instead of him, he's definitely tracking back. And Slater, to me, seems so, in the hypothetical world where Volta does get sacked and potentially we don't have a manager in place straight away and Andy Dawson comes in for a spell, I can absolutely see Slater as the sort of player that Dawson just goes, let's get that British core in. We'll get Slater in. We'll get, Coyle at right back. We'll get Simons maybe in midfield. Even Simons is probably a bad example, but like we'll get that British core in and just get back to our basics and do the basics right. And I think Slater's sort of the player that excels in that situation. The other one's Rushworth in goal. I think he was out with a bruised something. It was unspecified bruising. Bruised ego against Sheffield United. Whether we're making 5 changes to the 11 might be too much. but they're all. It's almost like you look at if you because you can trade it in two ways. You go either you got the 11 from Sheffield United and you go, well, who am I taking out? Or you go, we have a blank sheet in front of us. Who should the 11 be? And if you have the blank sheet, you probably make 5 changes because you go Rushworth in goal, you go Drame at left back, you go Zambrano or Puerta instead of Burns in midfield. You go what was the other one? You said Palmer for Mellum, and you go Miller maybe for Kamara. You go that's like 6 changes, but you go, they're all justified. So maybe you do it.
The Rushworth, that signing is or maybe not just necessarily him, but between him and Rakiopi,
yeah.
Like they're just the strangest like set of because we've got about 5 goalkeepers on the books.
We're looking like we're signing another one.
And then there's the Chelsea the trialist or whatever as well. That were like, it's just mental. And I go like if you were
Rakiopi Tyler just signed a new deal.
Yeah, like he played Champions League football last year, and he's come here, and he's come in as second string, unfortunately, and then now we've gone and signed another keeper, and like he's just got to be going, what the hell have I done here?
Yeah,
like he's like, it blows my mind. Like I feel like it just needed to be one of like those two. Like we had Panda, and he was either going to step up or he's going to be, continue to be as a number 2, and we then just needed to get one of those like solid experience sort of number 1s. And then you have, your Cartwrights and your Lototalas. One of those stays around probably as your sort of third choice, plays with the under 23s or under 21s or whatever, and like steps up. But it just seems like we've loaded up in that area. Like there in midfield, we've loaded up massively, and
we don't even play to the midfield. That's what I don't
we've
get.
made it made it unnecessarily complicated, to be honest. But anyway, Stoke. Look, I really hope we win. I really hope we do, because I think, as you say, they've just sacked their manager, a team, the points there to be taken. But the 5 games just don't fill me with any sense of confidence. The best I can see is a draw, and that's like a 1-1 or something.
Would you be happy with a draw?
Look, I don't know if happy is the word. I'd be happy with a win. I'd be barely satisfied with a draw. Like I'd be not disappointed if we got a draw, but I wouldn't necessarily be happy. And I'd be, or I don't know, irate with a loss.
I think we haven't led a game since Coventry back in April. I think if it's a score draw, I don't know. I'm thinking about it now. If it's a score draw that we lead, I don't know if that makes me more frustrated that we've conceded, or if we've chased and rescued a point. I think it has to be a score draw for me to be moderately okay with a draw. But even just leading a game at the moment would be good. But I honestly, I think I'm seeing a lot of people, like even like the Harlem-back boys were saying, has to be at least a draw. Like a draw would be good against Stoke. I'm like, no, I think we need a win. Like that sounds ruthless, and you're sort of saying, well, Stoke aren't that bad. I'm like, they've just sacked their manager. They don't have a manager in place at the moment. They're aside the preseason, we would have been absolutely backing ourselves to finish above. I struggle to see how much lower are our expectations becoming if we're going to be sitting here going, oh, a point away at Stoke's okay. Like maybe it would have been okay if we'd picked up 3 points against Plymouth and Millwall, and we're sitting here, on 7 or 8 points, and you go, yeah, okay, we'll take a point. That's fine. Move on. It's getting into must win sounds too harsh, but it's getting into territory where you're going, if we don't pick up 3 points against Stoke, the pressure on Volta to get 3 points against Cardiff is getting ridiculous, because if we then don't pick up 3 points against Cardiff, you almost think he's gone at that point.
Yeah, I think it goes sort of back to the point we made earlier about like expectations. Like if you just keep lowering your expectations, you just keep making excuses about stuff, players gelling, or you go, oh, well, if we get a point, that's good. But like, I think you're right. If you keep lowering the expectations, then we'll keep just lowering our league position. We'll end up in League One, and we'll go, and then next season we'll go, well, we'll win League One again, and like we'll just start again after like all the good work of the last couple of years. I think like you just have to. I mean, I know we can't do anything from like here as fans and supporters, but I'd like my expectation for this. Like you're right, like it should be a win. It has to be a win, and that's like why I'd say I'm not going to be happy with anything less than a win. But if we don't,
You're
at
just
least
realistic, yeah.
at the bare minimum, if we don't take a point, like then
Can we just score, please?
Yeah, I mean that too. Like just from open play as well. No
Yeah.
own goals and penalties don't count. Like
Yeah.
I'm not counting them in out. We just need some goals, a goal from open play. But yeah, I'm not overly confident. I'm probably tipping a draw. But I don't believe in God, but I'm praying to any God or all gods that will listen to put some magic in Betty's boots.
Giovanni or Phil Brown or Dean Windass or whoever, any sort of patron, Nick Barmby, patron saints of Hull City. Absolutely. Very quickly, just before we go, we talked to death about Volta. The only other point that I've seen sort of like pushing back on sacking him is, well, if you sack him, who are you going to get in? And Scott Lindsay's manager at Crawley Town brought them up from League Two, scoring 74, 75 goals in the process, a team that was tipped to get relegated to the National League. He's worked his magic with them and he's now got them flying's probably a bit too strong, but doing really well in League One. I think there's he's just an example, but he's one that sprang to mind. I think there's managers in that lower level who you could look to say, roll the dice, get in a manager who's got that attacking football, knows the English game, can set up, has the runs on the board that can set up a good system. And I think when he was in League Two last season, they did bring in a bunch of players, so he was able to make them work quite quickly. But there will be people say, if we sack him, who'd want to come here? Crazy Turkish owner, sacking managers all the time. Watford have shown there's always someone out there who's willing to take the job on. So especially if you're taking someone from a lower level to give them the chance. I just wanted to put his name out there because, who knows what's going to happen over the next few weeks in terms of discussions around that stuff.
You just want to be able to say, I called it first.
I sort of did that when we sacked Shotter, and I was like, I'd love to get Liam Rossini in, and I was like, oh, look, I called that. So I'll see if that happens. But look, yeah, for this one, I'm going to say 2-1 Stoke, to be honest. I think, look, if we score a goal, I'd be reasonably happy. I just have a bad feeling that Stoke, off the back of sacking a manager, will bounce back. And I really hope I'm
really poorly in these games anyway, against when it's teams that are either just sacked a manager or a new manager's just taken charge. We always seem to go really poorly. So
yeah, and Stoke as well in general, we seem to do terribly against as well. So, I mean, look, that being said, we did beat them at Stoke last season 3-1, where we looked quite good under Rossini. I think did Connolly might have scored 2 in that game. I think, I can't remember, but look, I really hope I'm wrong. Sincerely, I do. I hope we're sitting here next week going, hey, holding our hands up. Play looked so much better. Balumi scored, Bedia scored. We're off the mark. They looked fantastic. We can finally see what Volta's trying to do. It's all coming together. We can relax. I'm just a bit trepidatious. But on that very upbeat note, thanks for joining me for this one, Dan. It's been a long one.
Yeah, look, it has turned into a reasonably lengthy discussion, but I think it is what it is. It's just it's just a lot of passion, a lot of opinions about, a complicated system for a situation at a club we love. So I'm happy to give my time.
Absolutely. And look, thanks. I think we've had about 8 or 9 people watching along live with us as we've gone. Don't forget, if you can, to hit the like button before we sign off, and hit subscribe on the channel if you're new around here. Always appreciate new listeners as well. So, feel free to leave your thoughts in terms of what's been said. If you've got anything that agrees, disagrees, we're always open to alternate opinions. Appreciate the comment here from Bell Swinger saying good chat. Cheers. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. And thanks everyone for listening in. We'll be back next time. Until then, come on City.